Your cat rolls onto their back, stretches out, and exposes their belly to you. The soft fur, the vulnerable position, the direct eye contact. Most people read this as an invitation, a sign of complete trust that means, pet me here. Some have learned through scratched hands that it's actually a trap, a test of boundaries that you're supposed to fail. Both of these interpretations are real. Neither is what's actually happening. What your cat is communicating when they show you their belly is something that sounds nothing like either assumption, and understanding it requires looking at what's happening in their brain the moment they make that choice. Number 1. The trust signal that isn't about touch. In 2019, researchers at the University of Lincoln studied 30 cats in their home environments to decode the belly exposure behavior, using video analysis and cortisol measurement to determine what the behavior actually signals. What they found contradicts the straightforward trust narrative. When a cat exposes their belly to you, they are demonstrating social comfort and security in your presence. But that display is not an invitation for physical contact with that area. The belly exposure activates the same neural pathways associated with social bonding that researchers identified in a 2017 study at Oregon State University, where cats showed increased oxytocin when near their preferred humans. But here's the critical distinction the research makes clear. The behavior is about showing you something, not offering you something. Your cat is communicating, I feel safe enough to be vulnerable near you, which is fundamentally different from, I want you to touch my most vulnerable area. A 2021 study in applied animal behavior science tested this directly by observing 42 cats and their responses to belly exposure, followed by petting. 76% of cats who voluntarily exposed their bellies showed defensive behaviors, increased heart rate, or active avoidance when their bellies were actually touched. The behavior is the message. The message is complete without your participation. Number 2. The biological vulnerability they're acknowledging. The reason belly touching triggers defense, even in trusting cats, comes down to pure biology. The abdominal area contains vital organs with minimal skeletal protection, covered only by skin, fur, and muscle. In 2018, researchers at the University of Tokyo mapped the sensory nerve density in different areas of cats' bodies, and found that the ventral abdomen has approximately 300% higher concentration of touch-sensitive neurons compared to the back or sides. This isn't just about being ticklish or sensitive. From an evolutionary perspective, a wild cat exposing their belly to another animal would only do so in 2 contexts: during serious fighting when pinned, or in the presence of completely non-threatening individuals, typically their own offspring or long-term social partners. Your cat showing you their belly is them placing you in that second category, which represents profound social acceptance. But the reflex to protect that area remains hardwired. When you reach for their belly, even in a home where they feel completely safe, you're triggering a defensive response that exists at a level below conscious choice. A 2020 study by Dr. Sarah Ellis at the University of Nottingham found that cats' stress markers increased within 4 seconds of abdominal touch, even when the overall interaction remained positive. The cat simultaneously trusts you completely and cannot override the biological imperative to protect their core. Number 3. What they're actually inviting. If the belly exposure isn't about belly rubs, what is your cat asking for? Research from 2022 at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences examined 63 cats' behavioral sequences around belly exposure and found a consistent pattern. In 84% of observed cases, belly exposure was followed by the cat's preference for facial rubbing, head scratching, or simply sustained proximity without touch. The behavior functions as what researchers call a social opener, a way of initiating interaction while simultaneously communicating comfort level and boundaries. When your cat shows you their belly and you respond by scratching their cheeks, chin, or the base of their ears, you're actually responding correctly to what they're requesting. These areas have scent glands that cats use for social bonding, and a 2016 study found that stimulation of these facial areas increased positive affiliation behaviors by 67% compared to body petting. Your cat is offering vulnerability as a form of communication, then directing you toward the interaction they actually want. The cats in the Swedish study who received appropriate responses to belly exposure showed increased frequency of the behavior over 6 months, while cats whose bellies were repeatedly touched despite defensive signals showed a 43% decrease in belly exposure and a 31% decrease in approach behaviors overall. Number 4. the individual variation that breaks the rule. There's a subset of cats, approximately 12 to 15% based on aggregated behavioral data, who genuinely do enjoy belly rubs and actively seek them. A 2023 study at UC Davis examined what differentiates these cats and found several factors. Early socialization that included frequent, gentle handling of all body areas before 7 weeks of age, specific genetic lines associated with the Ragdoll and Maine Coon breeds that show reduced touch sensitivity, and individual temperament variations linked to lower baseline cortisol. These cats exist, but they're the exception that proves the rule. Even among belly-tolerant cats, researchers found that the duration of accepted belly touching averaged 8 to 12 seconds before the cat redirected to other interaction, compared to 45 to 60 seconds for head and facial petting. If your cat is one of these individuals, you already know it because they actively push their belly into your hand. They don't tense or show any ears back signals during the touch, and they return immediately for more. For everyone else, the research suggests you're likely misreading tolerance for enjoyment, or catching your cat in a moment of such deep relaxation that they're not fully registering the touch as the boundary violation their nervous system is designed to perceive it as. Number 5. The communication system you're entering. Understanding the belly exposure properly means understanding that cats operate on a more complex communication system than the binary of invitation and rejection. Research by Dr. John Bradshaw at the University of Bristol examined how domestic cats adapted their social signaling from their solitary wild ancestors. And the findings show that cats developed an elaborate vocabulary of graduated signals specifically for interacting with humans. The belly exposure sits at the high end of this trust spectrum. In a 2017 study tracking 89 cats over 3 months, belly exposure appeared in only 23% of human-cat interactions and occurred almost exclusively with primary caregivers rather than visitors or secondary household members. When your cat shows you their belly, they're using one of their highest-level trust signals, one that in wild cat species would be reserved for mother-kitten interactions or between adult cats who have lived together for years. The appropriate response isn't to treat it as permission to touch wherever you want. It's to recognize you're being given something rare, to acknowledge it by engaging with the interaction your cat is actually requesting, and to let the behavior remain what it is, a statement, not a question. Cats who have their belly signals consistently understood show increased interactive behaviors overall, including more frequent approach, more vocalization directed at their human, and longer duration of physical contact in the areas they actually prefer. Number 6. What happens when you get it wrong? The consequences of misreading belly exposure aren't just about scratched hands in the moment. A longitudinal study from 2021, published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior, followed 134 cats whose owners reported frequent belly-touching attempts despite defensive responses. Over 18 months, these cats showed measurable changes in their relationship with their humans. 58% decrease in voluntary belly exposure, 41% reduction in approaching their owner for any interaction, and increased cortisol markers suggesting chronic, low-level stress in the home environment. The cats weren't being dramatic or holding grudges. They were learning that one of their clearest trust signals was being consistently misinterpreted as consent for something they found uncomfortable. The research shows they adapt by either stopping the signal entirely or, in 23% of cases, escalating to more aggressive defensive responses. Your cat doesn't think you're betraying them when you go for their belly. They think you don't understand the language. In contrast, the control group of cats whose belly signals were acknowledged but not physically responded to with belly touching maintained stable or increasing rates of belly exposure, suggesting the behavior served its purpose when simply witnessed and respected. The next time your cat rolls over and shows you their belly, here's what's actually happening. Their brain is releasing oxytocin because they feel safe in your presence. Safe enough to their sensory system is simultaneously on alert, ready to protect that area reflexively if touched. They're opening a social interaction, communicating comfort and trust, and likely hoping you'll respond with the kind of contact they genuinely enjoy, focused on their face and head. The behavior is complete as a statement. It doesn't need your hands on their stomach to mean what it means. Understanding this doesn't diminish the trust your cat is showing you. It deepens it, because you're learning to read their communication accurately instead of projecting what you think they should mean. If you've been a belly toucher and your cat has tolerated it, you can start shifting your response now. Acknowledge the belly. Scratch their head instead. and watch whether the belly exposure increases in frequency over the next few weeks. That increase will tell you that you're finally speaking the same language. If you want to see more research-backed explanations of what your cat is really communicating, subscribe and let me know in the comments what behavior you want decoded next.